Made for Me, Chapter 54. Danielle watched the snow fall until her eyes hurt, trying to put off seeing Andre, the source of so much pain. Coward, her father said. No one forced her to sleep with Andre. She thought of her father at length then, missing him desperately and wondering when she was going to be able to fly home. "Miss Grant," said a nurse, standing in the doorway, "Andre Mettler is still waiting to see you. Shall I send him in?" Danielle glanced at the time. He'd been here approximately 3 hours. She sighed and told the nurse that would be fine. Might as well get this over with. She was still staring out the window when the door opened and she forced her head to turn. Andre hesitantly approached the bed. "I'm sorry, Danielle." The word sounded odd. He'd never apologized to her during their relationship, not once. For what? He had so many things to be sorry for. Andre's eyes, the ones she'd once cherished, changed color at her cold tone. All of it. That was very broad, she thought bitterly. She just wanted him to leave. She looked down at her hands. She didn't have much else to say. What she did determine, however, was to get his name the hell off any paperwork regarding her health and the health of the baby, just in case something else happened. Maybe she'd put Georgie's name on it instead. "I'm sorry about your father, Danielle. Lars told me." She looked out to the falling snow. This month had already broken records, and it wasn't finished yet. "Lars loves you a lot." Andre had said it without jealousy. Danielle couldn't help looking at his face. He appeared humble. "Do you want me to go?" he asked. Danielle traced the IV, saying nothing. The scent of his cologne made its way to her nose, and she rubbed it, shaking her head a little. "I smell again?" he asked, trying to break the tension. But she was in no mood to joke. "I'm sensitive to most colognes and perfumes now," she told him, still looking down, even as she realized she was never bothered by the colognes that Lars wore. "I see," he said. "My father told me about your conversation with him. I'd like you to know that I never stopped loving you, Danielle, ever." She didn't want to hear any more from him. "Thank you for coming," she said abruptly, giving him the briefest of glances. "Just listen, Danielle." His voice changed, half pleading, half earnest. She raised her eyes to his, feeling cold and closed. "I wanted to marry you so badly, and I was so hurt and devastated. I didn't think of you. I couldn't think of you," he continued. "But I had to watch over you at the club and with Giles because I still cared." "Really?" she questioned. "Caring meant bringing another woman to our company event?" "That was a mistake on my part." "You think? And I guess your caring for me couldn't have risen to the level of you using your fingers and calling? Or being civil to me at the restaurant? Or throwing away my letter?" His blue eyes didn't leave hers, and he nodded. "I know. I didn't want to make it worse, what I thought would be worse. And now it is," she finished for him. He'd had his time to talk. "Okay, I'll leave," he said, turning away, but then pausing. "But let me ask you this," he said, turning back quickly. "If you detest me so much, how can it be that you want my daughter, our daughter, to know me, to know my family? It certainly won't be good if you are so angry with me that all she hears is vitriol. Because I do the right thing, Andre, no matter how hard it is and how much it hurts." She had finally found her voice and was determined to use it. She'd had months to think of ways she could have responded to him in his apartment, and now, through unforeseen circumstances, she was getting the opportunity to speak. "I never considered not having you in her life or your parents. That doesn't mean I will always be happy about it, nor does it mean you and I will have much of a relationship in the process. I can only hope that we can become friends to whatever degree possible and enjoy something beautiful that we have created." "And that's it?" Danielle's mouth dropped open. "Are you kidding me?" Her voice rose with the pulsing monitor. "Do you have any idea of the hell that I went through after you turned your back on me? And now, the hell that I'm going to go through as a single mother with no relationship to speak of with any man because I'm honoring you, the person who deserves it the least?" Andre's shoulders moved back, the force of her statement catching him off guard. Lars is a wonderful man," she cut in, her voice still loud, "and far more deserving than you to have this child." She was wholly unconcerned with his feelings. "And as to your worry about vitriol, No matter what you choose to do or say, I will never, ever utter a bad word about you to our daughter or anyone else. Those are the morals I learned from my father, and they will never change." Andre's eyes lost a little life as she spoke, and if she had been in any other frame of mind, perhaps if her father hadn't died, perhaps if Lars hadn't just left her, perhaps many things. But Andre stood there, taking it, not backing away or leaving. Instead, he stepped forward towards the bed, resting his hands on the side. "Danielle, if the business restriction hadn't come up or didn't exist at all, would we still be dating? Would you even have gotten to know Lars better or even dated him once?" Danielle tried to avoid looking at him, but couldn't. Lars had essentially said the same thing. It was the confluence of events that had stripped her of a perfectly healthy, normal, and wonderful relationship with one man, accelerating her into the arms of another. "I thought so," Andre said quietly and fervently. "And I know you hate me for not waiting, but I was hurting too." Danielle didn't want to hear about him hurting. "Danielle, I want to try again. A child deserves two parents together as a family unit. All it takes is love. Do you think you could try just a little?" Danielle felt like she was in the middle of a war and it was starting to get ugly on the front lines. Lars had been right again. Andre still wanted her. But she was going to hold her ground out of pride and a sense of justification, as well as for Lars and all he represented. To give Andre a chance made her feel like she was being unfaithful to Lars. Danielle maintained her defenses as she started talks of a truce. "You want me to start speaking with you again?" He nodded. "By phone and email?" He nodded again. "Lars told me he talked with the partners. You can still keep your job if we are together, but you'd have to give up all your non-Metlering accounts. The one exception to that is Lars said the partners still want the MRD funds you've placed with you to remain. Max and the guys would be out, as would everyone else. If you can live with that, you keep your job and we can be together." He'll put it in writing. No penalties, no firing, just us living. Danielle gulped, feeling the sting of tears. That man loved her so much. It wasn't right. It just wasn't right. She put her hand to her eyes. "Please leave," she whispered. Andre touched her free hand. "You would rather be here in the hospital room alone than attend your father's funeral also alone than to be with me?" "What other choice do I have, Andre?" She seethed at him, pulling away. "I have no family." "Let me be there for you and with you," he said just as forcefully. "You are a part of my family." "No!" she practically shouted, ready to kick him out, then felt something that stopped her. She gasped, clutching her stomach. Andre froze. "Are you okay?" Danielle glared at him as she slowed her breathing. She grudgingly nodded. "May I ask how far along you are?" 5 months, give or take. The muscles in Andre's jaw flexed. "April?" She watched him as he worked through the dates. She'd become pregnant at the very end of their relationship. She would have the baby right around the time her 1-year mark at MRD. If he'd only waited. Andre lifted his arms and sat at the edge of the bed, the furthest he could move away but still be in her personal space. "Will you allow me to be involved in any way during this time?" She sighed, exasperated. "I don't even know if I will be able to keep her, Andre, and all this drama will just add to the pain that we must endure." "So," he began cautiously, as if his words would make the difference between keeping and losing the child inside her womb. "Assuming you can carry the baby, will you allow me to be involved?" Danielle had no quick comeback. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her voice sounding as weary and wrung out as her heart. Andre's look of angst increased, and she saw him backing down, not wanting to pressure her. He knew he had no rights. Everything would be done, and would be done so on her terms, not his. "Doctor's visits," he suggested. "Ultrasounds? Shopping for items? Think about it, please," he encouraged, his voice holding an edge of desperation which tore at her soul. "And if you need anything that you can't or do because you're working, I'll help out." Danielle wanted to reject his offer outright, but kept her mouth shut. "Be prudent," she imagined her father saying. "I'll think about it," she conceded, less reluctantly than she would have expected moments prior. Andre's shoulders relaxed. "Will you do me a favor and please send me the address of the funeral home? Texting would be fine. I know my father will want to send flowers. He's been so worried about you. For a long time, I understand." Danielle couldn't disguise her feelings for Andre's father. "I have a soft spot for him," she said, her tone kinder. "He was there when no one else was." Andre's head dropped. When he met her eyes, they were glassy. "I'm so sorry, Danielle," he said, his voice hoarse. "Me too." An hour after he left, the doctor told her she was free to go. She thought of Lars first, Andre second, and a taxi third. She'd better get used to how she operated her life before these men came into it.